and I want to chat with you about closures for homemade journals. I get quite a few questions about it, and of course there is a large variety of journals out there and therefore also a large variety of closures, but I thought I'd show you the ones I used so far. I'll start with the most simple is probably a ribbon like this. Now in this case I just made a hole, put my ribbon through, let it go all across here underneath the signature and another hole and out again, and I did glue it down a bit so it wouldn't pull out. And yes, this works just fine, but of course it's a very simple journal. Now of course you can also attach your ribbon with paper brad like I did in this case. Now if you're smart, you do this first so you don't see the paper brad here, or you can cover it up with paper afterwards or some embellishment if you like. So this works of course. Now if you don't like the looks of paper brads, you can either get fancy big ones which are already decorated. You can get them in craft stores, or you can just decorate your own. In this case I had a big brad, but it was very plain, and I added a piece of jewelry on both sides. I attached it with super glue because it was metal on metal, and yes, it's been there for a long time and hasn't gone anywhere, so that works and it makes it look more pretty. Of course, when you attach your ribbon, you could just thread it through and knot it on this side. That would also work. So after the ribbon, you can also do a wraparound like this one. Now again, it's a simple journal. It has this little fold over which I think works nice for wraparounds, and I just added a button with a little string. I left the string here, but again you can cover it. Now this button is actually two buttons because I wanted those colors. So if you don't have the button you like, you can always put two on top of each other, or maybe even three, and it makes it, gives a completely different effect. Now you can use a ribbon. I used a cord and I tied it up here to make the loop which goes around the button, and it goes once, twice, and then around there and holds it in place. A little bead. Now in this case I purposely used a cord because I had the beads on the spine and I didn't want to have a big piece of ribbon going across. But of course the ribbon works great. Now when you do the wraparound, I think you need to watch what you have on your front cover. If you happen to have a face, you might not want to have a ribbon going right across it, and you might opt for some different closure. Now you don't need to use a button. You can also do it without it, like this one. Now this is again a very simple one, but of course these work for bigger journals too. I just doubled my ribbon, made a loop, put it through the hole, and again you just go a couple times and then just slip this under. Now in this case you do need a little something flat, and this has a little way to keep it in place, so this would work as well. Of course if you have a big stubborn journal, you might need two strings. This is a wraparound too, but a little different. Now this is an accordion journal and it tends to want to open, so I used two. I just made a little slit, pulled this through, let's see if I find the other side, and then just glued it down. Very simple. And you need two long pieces so you can actually really wrap it around and keep it closed. So this is another way you can do a wraparound. Or you can do a wraparound with two buttons like I did in this case. This is a very kind of heavy-duty covered book, and it's already very chunky, and I wanted something which keeps it securely closed but also gives me room to grow. So I used two buttons and this ribbon with a little tassel on the back. Now these buttons are the ones who have the little extra metal piece, because I need the room here to wrap this around. I just tied it up with a little yarn and a little button on the inside. I made two holes, and it looks nice to have a little button on the inside. and on this side as well. So this is another way of using a wraparound. Let's see what else we have. Then of course you could also use a button and a small hair elastic. Like in this case, I just sewed on the button and I did it so you don't see it. And here too I sewed on the little hair elastic. And that of course works perfectly. Or in this case I used again a button with a little metal piece, but because the cover is fairly thin, I just pushed it through and attached it with one of those split jewelry rings, and that works great. Now in this case, first of all, the cover is very fat, so even if I was able to push that little metal thing through, I would hardly have any room to attach it. But also I wanted that metal piece, so I have room for this. So those were those. Then of course you can use bigger elastics. Like this was an original moleskin, so it came with this already. But of course you can do it yourself. It's basically an elastic which goes in 2 holes and then ties in the middle, or you can glue it or sew it. And you can embellish it too. I added a couple little buttons and a little flower. Now again, here you need to look a little bit what you have on the cover. It doesn't fit with every design because it goes across like this. Or you can have it go across this way. This is even simpler. Now again, this is a very simple journal, but the closure can be used of course for other journals as well. I only made a knot and a slit. You can of course sew it or glue it. And this was a baby hairband, but you can use any elastic you might want to use. A very quick closure, like if you want a notebook, you're just going to carry it around. This is great. Alright, and that was that. Let's see what we have next. Now, you can also close it in the front using a ribbon, and there's different ways of attaching it. In this case I used a metal gear which had 2 holes in the middle, which I just thread my ribbon through, and I attached the gear with 2 paper brads. And in this case I was smart. I did the brads first and then my paper, so you can't even see it. And yes, that works nicely. So I'm going to put this away. Now if you can sew, there's of course a whole lot of other closures you can use. This was has a flip over too, and it lends itself to tie ribbon like this. This one was just a long piece of cloth going across to hold the back cover, and at the same time close this with a ribbon. Of course, when you use fabric, that opens up a whole nother avenue of closures. One other one I have is fabric is this one. I just had these suspender clips forever, and I wanted to use them, and so I used them here by just making a fold here in the fabric, which gives me those little openings. And yeah, that's another fun closure. And as I said, there is multitude of closures available when you use fabrics. Or another sewn closure is this, when you make a belt, and then I use seam binding here, but of course you could again use a button or something else to close this. You could also attach the belt in a way that the ends meet on this side and you have the closure right here. So this would be another way. And then last not least, a couple of metal closures which I really like. This one has one of those little paper clips. I think it's called a little alligator clip, and I attached it to a little chain, and the chain goes through here and is attached again with one of those split jewelry rings, and it also has room for a little embellishment, a little dangle here, and it closes. And yeah, I like this a lot. Or you can even use 2, like I did in this case. I used 2 paper clips and I attached piece of chain, and I made it longer so I could take it out of this ring and make it longer should this journal get real chunky and I need more room, which I think it is just about needing that because it's pretty tight. So this would be another one. So let me look around. I think I showed you everything I have so far. Well, I hope it was helpful, and I hope it will help you with your homemade journals. Bye bye.